Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we'll explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each week on the Dr. Diane Show, we will have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. Today, I'm excited to talk to you about the new psychology of aging, Living Younger Part 2. So if for those of you who were with us last week, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap. And for people who are listening to the show for the first time, you're going to learn some new information about the new psychology of aging. But I wanted to just sort of refresh everybody's memory from a week ago and, highlight some of the more important things that we talked about that I think are good for us to kind of go back to and just refresh and all of that before we get into more of the meat of my favorite topic, which is the whole mindset, brain health section on one of my pillars of living younger. So last week, we pondered the question, why do we age? And I really want people to really think about that question. Think about it from the perspective of, what is your mindset around aging? How do you feel about getting older? What kinds of, thoughts come into your mind, positive and negative? Unfortunately, most of the time, I think when we talk about getting older and aging, people's thoughts go to a negative perspective on what they're not going to be able to do, or, their health concerns and how they might not be able to be as active or travel and that kind of thing. But what we're going to really get into is the question, why do we age? I think we've looked at it as a society that sees aging as inevitable. And that's where I think the negative perspective comes into play, because we're thinking of it as, okay, this is something that's going to happen to me. I don't have any control over it. It's inevitable. There's a lot of negative things. I see people, whether it's my family or friends, as they get older, again, having health issues, not being able to be as active or do things. So I think we need to look at it first from a different perspective of what is the possibility as we get older? And is it possible to actually turn back the clock and stop or even reverse aging? And I think that, well, those of you who were with us last week, that we talked about a lot of things that actually show it is possible. And not only that, there's a lot of research and study going on right now with mice studies and also human studies that are showing that there are ways to reverse aging and slow down physiological things that are happening in the body. And it's really, I think, one of the most exciting times to be alive when you're talking about looking into all of this research. So one of the things I talked about last week is the research I did for my doctoral program, and that 12 weeks of a high intensity strength training program actually reversed the effects of aging in 65 to 80-year-olds. I saw 80-year-old men and women becoming stronger, more flexible, more stable, leaner. In fact, they even looked younger. And one of the things that was really the most eye-opening for me in doing that research is that when I learned that muscle mass was lost at a rate of about 6% per decade after the age of 50, that really hit me like, wow, we need to really start thinking about educating our populations on the importance of strength training and how important that is, because if you're losing 6% per decade, what do you think or why do we think, or why are we surprised that when people are in their 80s, they've lost almost 20% of their muscle mass? And so that's why we have issues with people being unstable and falling, and, everything from metabolic effects to, people just not being able to do the same things that they did. So in my graduate research, we actually saw that muscle mass was increased by about 12% in our subjects within 2 months of strength training. So think about that for a minute. Essentially, 2 months of a high intensity strength training program actually reversed at least 2 decades of strength loss and muscle mass with advanced aging. I mean, that to me is just amazing. And, if you're not involved in a strength training program, I absolutely think it's something that you should think about. Both men and women, I know probably it's something that more women aren't doing than men, but it's just as important for women for sure. And it's going to help us even more so with the fact that we have a lot more bone density issues than men do. And so strength training will help keep our bones strong as we age. It actually helps us maintain our weight, because the more muscle we have, the greater our ability to burn calories and fat. So from a metabolic perspective, strength training is amazing. And just all the other things that we talked about in terms of the effects on the body that it can have. So, definitely think about adding strength training to your routine. Obviously, if you're going to go to a gym, you want to vet the personal trainers that are there. I would highly recommend hiring a personal trainer if you've never strength trained in your life before, because definitely it's something that you want to learn the right technique and the right way to do it so that you don't, get hurt or have any injuries. But I think that, I've been saying it for years. Like, I'm a huge, huge proponent of strength training. And when you look at all the research that I've done and just all the research that's out there, there's just so many benefits of it. So absolutely. That's one of the things that I love to talk about in terms of how we've seen it reverse aging or even slow down aging. And one of the other things that we talked about last week, or the question I proposed is, research in Western medicine has been focused for so long on curing diseases, things like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and trying to figure out, why do these diseases occur, or how do we treat the symptoms? How do we, forestall certain diseases? But the question that I posed, and I'll pose it again, is it really disease that's causing aging, or does aging cause disease? So how many of you have ever thought about that? Does disease cause aging, or does aging cause disease? And what if we focused research on curing aging instead of, dividing all our resources to, research and study all these different diseases? If we focused all of the research, all of the money on figuring out how to cure aging, by virtue of that, would we cure all disease? And that's what some of the research is showing now, that really the one disease that we need to be worried about, or the one disease we need to focus on, is the disease of aging. And it's actually treatable. I was at a huge conference in South Dakota about a month ago called the Freedom Fest Conference. And very interestingly enough, there was a group of different researchers and scientists, MDs, PhDs, that were there presenting all kinds of information on longevity medicine. And one of the things that one of them said was, the first country that actually comes forward and says, you know what, we're going to consider or classify aging as a disease, as its own disease. And we are going to start focusing all of our research and time and money into figuring this out and curing this as a disease. So one of these guys was basically saying, the first country that comes out and says that is going to be so far ahead of the rest of the world in terms of, all these revolutionary modalities that we're seeing, and ways to treat aging. And like I said, just the amount of money that could be saved in terms of spreading it across, trying to figure out how to cure, individual diseases. And of course, I hope that that's going to be the US, because that would be an amazing thing for, for to be involved in and to be in this country and see that happening. But either way, I hope that one country will come forward and decide that they're going to spend their efforts on that. So it's really, really fascinating work. We talked about Dr. David Sinclair and his research and his book, Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. One of the best books I've read in a long time. He says, aging is not an inevitable part of life, but rather a disease process with a broad spectrum of pathological consequences. And so, all of his research is focused on DNA and how breaking DNA basically is his theory on why aging is caused, and how to slow that down, and how to turn on and support our longevity genes. We talked a little bit about supplements and my recommendation to look into NAD as a supplement, probably the one that I would suggest because it's what affects your longevity genes the most. We talked a little bit about water and how important clean, filtered, structured water is, and where you can get structured water, whether you're getting it from plants or fruits, or even different water systems that you can have in your home that can structure your water and add hydrogen to it, and how important that is in terms of keeping us healthy and eliminating dehydration. Being able to absorb structured water allows us to absorb water more efficiently. It produces more energy in our cells, and it basically helps our cells' ability to repair, regenerate, and provide more vitality. There's a great article on structured water in the July issue of my magazine, Natural Nutmeg, www.naturalnutmeg.com. You can click on our July-August issue and look up the article, Clean Your Tap Water of Toxins and Chemicals, and get a ton of awesome information. So that was our recap from last week. And I'm going to be moving into my favorite topic, mindset and brain health. But we're going to take a short break right now. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we will explore more about this fascinating subject of the new psychology of aging. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am talking to you today about the new psychology of aging, living younger. But before we continue, I wanted to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com for those of you in Connecticut, and www.essentialnaples.com for people in Southwest Florida. And of course, anyone can go to those websites and get amazing information. It really doesn't matter, what part of the country or world that you live in, but most of the content is focused or written by local practitioners in each of those locations. But it's just a wealth of information, probably about 15 years of all kinds of content related to natural health, how to treat different chronic health issues naturally, how to take a more preventative or holistic perspective to your lifestyle. So I hope you'll have some time to visit those two sites for sure. And I love the next topic that we're going to talk about, and that is my third living younger pillar, which is brain health and mindset. And I always ask people this question: did you know that your mental patterns could be harming your DNA or your longevity genes? And people always look at me like, what is she talking about? Yeah, the way that you think and what kind of a mindset you have, whether you have a positive or a negative, a fixed or a growth mindset, can actually turn your genes on or shut them off. And we're learning a lot more in this field of research that rates of aging actually lie in these complex interactions when we're talking about, genes, social relationships, environments, lifestyles, and honestly, the way that you think. There are a ton of amazing books that are out there, and I'm going to reference some, as we go through the show today, some of the best books that I've read for sure on mindset and how to manage, thoughts and beliefs, and just the importance of the way that you think in terms of how, not only how it shapes your life, but how it really keeps you healthy or may lead you down to the path of disease. And, I think one of the things we don't take enough time to think about is the amount of mind power we actually have. We're so busy worrying about all different kinds of things, I don't know, you name it. Think about, I bet if I asked you right this second, you could rattle off 5 to 10 things that you were worrying about today, or the same kind of thought patterns that you have. And we don't ever worry about the amount of mind power that we actually have and how we're only using about 10% of it. And there's actually studies to show that. It's pretty amazing. And I think when we start to think about it, one of the first things I like to get people in the habit of doing is realizing the amount of control that we actually have over our thoughts and our belief systems. Because sometimes I feel like we can get into negative thought patterns, and we can kind of spiral into, worrying about things and thinking the same thing over and over, ruminating about things, and not realizing that we actually do have the ability to stop that, to kind of recognize when we're having negative thought patterns and kind of jump in and flip the switch and, start to think of it from a different perspective. So I try to get people to think about, the first step is realizing that you actually have this power. You can meditate, you can take a breath, you can have sticky notes all over your desk or wherever to say, with positive affirmations. You can take time to be grateful for one thing. One of the things that I like to tell people to do, one of the little hacks that I have, is when you wake up every morning, think of one thing that makes you smile. It could be anything. I mean, it could be your pet, your dog, your cat. It could be your children. It could be the way your hair came out today. It could be anything that just, as soon as you think of it, it's going to make you smile. And write that down on a sticky note and put it on the wall. And when you notice that you're having a negative thought, something doesn't go right in your day, you have an argument with somebody, you're trying to get out of the office and all kinds of things are popping up at the last minute, whatever, anything that puts you in a negative thought pattern or bad mood, look at that sticky note and think of the thing that's going to make you smile. I call it a flip switch, and I've used it for years. And I'm not saying it works every day, because even me, as positive as I, try to be and really make an effort every day, certainly there's days where I'm like, you know what? I see that flip switch and I don't care. I'm mad. I'm still going to be in a negative thought pattern, but I'm consciously making that decision that I want to stay mad. And it's so funny because in the back of my head, my other positive voice is, you could get out of this at any time, but you're choosing to stay in the negative thought pattern. So first step, realizing you have the power to get out of it. And the second step, believing you can direct your thought patterns. So I'm having negative thoughts. I'm aware of them. I know I can get out of these negative thoughts. I can choose to focus on something I'm grateful for, something that makes me smile. And I can direct my thought pattern. I can direct the way that I'm going to think about something. And then the third step is basically just to center your thought on that. Center your thought on what you want. We spend so much time thinking about what we don't want, worrying about what might never happen or negative things that are going to happen, being fearful of something, being angry at something. These are all negative things. It all boils down to we're thinking about stuff we don't want, things we don't want to happen, things we don't like, negative things that happened. We need to focus more on what do we want and shutting the door on those thoughts of, fear or worry or lack or disease, and also shutting the door on people in our lives that are bringing negativity. And I'm not saying shutting the door, meaning, get them out and get rid of them. I mean, your family, you're not going to get rid of them. Things I'm saying, shut the door on, ruminating over something that they said and being too focused on the negativity that somebody else might be bringing in your life, and focus on what it is you want. Because in the end, we can only do what we think we can do. We can only be what we think we can be, and we can only have what we think we can have. And basically, those three things, what we do, what we are, what we have, depend on our thoughts. And the only way we live younger or flip, the stop aging, reverse aging, I believe, is if we believe that, if we focus our thoughts on, yeah, I think that's a possibility. I think that I'm going to be able to live younger. I'm going to take steps to do that. And I believe that my mindset and my body can do that for me. So just to recap that, realize you have the power to change your thoughts, believe that you can direct that power, center your thoughts on what you want, focus on that, and eliminate as much as you can your own negative thoughts, other people's negative thoughts, and focus on what you want. And then really nothing is impossible. If we really think about it from that perspective, nothing is really impossible. Everything is really within our grasp as long as we believe that we have the ability to do that. One of the best books I've read recently is called The Secret of the Ages, and that's by Robert Collier. And he says, the subconscious mind does not reason. It takes the thoughts you send to it and works them out to their logical conclusion. Send it thoughts of health and strength, and it will work out health and strength in your body. Send it suggestions of fear or disease, and basically you're likely to see manifestations of that. So when I read that, that was really powerful to me, that's the power of the subconscious mind. We don't even know, we're aware of our conscious thoughts, but what are all those conscious thoughts messages sending to our subconscious mind? We don't, we're not thinking of that because it's in our subconscious, but it is pretty amazing in terms of how your subconscious and conscious mind works together. And really, in all the research I've done on what limits people, it comes down to their thoughts and their belief systems. When I look at, successful people in business or successful people in relationships, when I talk to them and ask them questions, what do you think it is that's made you successful? Even when I look at my life and I think about, okay, how did I start a magazine from scratch, from nothing really, from just an idea and passion and a dream? It was because I basically said to myself, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And I just kept moving forward and not, I'm not saying I didn't have doubts. Sure, they were there, but I pushed those things out of my mind and focused on exactly what it was that I want. And that's what successful people do too. I mean, that's the answers I get every time I ask. It's basically, well, I just focused on what I wanted and not what I didn't want. And that makes sense to me because, whatever thoughts you have, whatever you verbalize to yourself, the things you say, your brain is listening all the time. That's subconscious mind, conscious mind, and then the messages it sends to the subconscious mind, it's always listening and then directing the energy to fulfill those messages essentially. So, in studies that we look at with this, even if your thoughts aren't real, your brain reacts as if an actual threat is occurring in the outside world. And when we come back, after we take a short break, I want to do a little experiment with you guys and show you how your brain actually does respond to a threat, even if it's not occurring in the outside world. So you're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll explore more about this fascinating subject of the new psychology of aging. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am talking to you today about the new psychology of aging. And right before the break, we were talking about basically how your subconscious, your brain, reacts as if an actual threat is occurring in the outside world, even if it's not. And I wanted to play a little game with you guys because I think this is really kind of fascinating to show how I believe that this is actually true. So I want you to think of your worst fear right now. So what might that be? It could be, maybe you're afraid of sharks, or maybe you're afraid of the dentist, or maybe you're afraid to fly, or maybe you're afraid of public speaking. Just pick one, pick something that if somebody were to ask you to do it, for example, let's say you're at the beach and well, I'll make that even more specific. You're in Cape Cod off the coast where there's a million sharks, and you have to go out in the water for some reason, or you're afraid to fly and you have to take a flight for business, and you're walking down the aisle to take your seat in the plane, or you have to go to the dentist, or whatever it might be. So I want you to close your eyes for a minute, and I want you to really visualize whatever the scenario is. Okay, put yourself exactly in that scenario and just think about it for a second. And I'll give you mine. I don't want to say that I'm actually, severely afraid to fly, but it makes me kind of a little bit uneasy, especially if we have turbulence. So I would be visualizing, okay, I'm sitting in, my seat on the plane. I've, buckled up. They've done all the safety stuff. They're pushing back. The plane's taxiing out to the runway. And if I really put myself in that scenario, if I'm closing my eyes and I'm visualizing that, and I can actually see myself there, I can physically feel a sensation. I can, almost feel the nervousness. I can feel my heart rate increase a little bit, my breathing increasing. And it's pretty amazing. I've done this experiment, so to speak, with when I've done presentations and, had people in the audience do the whole thing. And by far the vast majority will say to me, yeah, I actually had like a visceral response. I actually felt, a physiological change in my body when I put myself in this situation. So you all know that you're not in it right now, right? I mean, you're just sitting here listening to me. But you had, you might have had this physiological response. So basically, you just created that situation in your mind, even though it's not actually happening in reality. So to me, that is proof that even if the thoughts aren't real, even if, you're sitting in your car, or you're sitting at your house, or wherever you are right now, you're walking somewhere, whatever it might be, you're not in the scenario that you just envisioned, but you were able to recreate the actual physiological responses, the actual emotions, the feeling in your body of fear, essentially. So, your brain is reacting as if it's actually occurring. And that to me is just amazing. Every time I kind of think about that or lay that, I have people do it, the response that I get is great, because I don't think people think about it from that perspective. Like, you don't actually put yourself in the scenario to realize that you can actually recreate these physiological responses, even though it's not really happening right now. So you're proving to yourself that even if the thoughts aren't real, you can still create a physiological response. So that essentially means that, what is happening when you're having negative thoughts and you're not even thinking about what that could be doing to your genetics, to your longevity genes, to your cells, all of those things. What kinds of chemicals are going on in your body, metabolic things that are happening that basically could be having a negative impact on you. And, we go along day to day and just kind of take for granted that, well, we're just going to worry about something, or we're going to fear something, or we're going to get into an argument about something. And all of these thoughts and emotions, negative and positive, can have huge impacts on our physiology, on our bodies, on our health. And I think that's something that I think, we should think about from that perspective, and just be more aware of it and make more of a conscious effort to, as much as we can, eliminate a lot of the negative thoughts and the fear and things like that, because words really can change your brain. There's another great book by Dr. Andrew Newberg and Mark Robert Waldman. And they quote, "A single word has the power to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress." And it's true. Words can change your brain. Hostile words can disrupt genes that protect us from stress, and it can actually turn longevity genes on and off, which is pretty amazing that, words can actually do that. So I have this little mantra that I teach people: stop being afraid of what could go wrong and think of what could go right. And, people always tell me, oh, you're so positive. I bet you never worry about stuff. You don't have to worry, you don't think about negative things that are going to happen. Well, I have to tell this story because, and I tell all the time when people say things like that to me, because I want people to know that I'm not, I love to teach this stuff. I practice it every day as much as I can, but I'm not immune. I'm not exempt from negative thinking, negative, thought patterns, getting into a rut, being angry or fearful about something. I am the same as everybody else. And I think that's important for people to know. So there were definitely times in my life when I was focused on negativity, or I was fearful of something. And one of those times was actually when I was in doctoral school doing all that research on strength training in the elderly. And I had, before I went back to, in between when I was getting my undergrad and going back for grad school, I got my undergrad in marketing, then decided I was going to go back for a health degree in exercise physiology, and was in my master's degree. And I was home for a summer, living at home with my parents. And I remember I was in this conversation with my father, and I couldn't tell you now what we were talking about. And I remember we were kind of debating back and forth about something. And I made a statement about something I believed. And he looked at me and kind of laughed and said, "Oh, Diane, you're not that dumb. How can you say that? That's just dumb." And I don't, maybe it was, I kind of laugh now because I think back, I'm like, I really wish I could remember what that conversation was. Because who knows, I was 25. I probably did say something, that was silly or dumb or whatever, but whatever it was, and the fact that, it was my father that said that to me, I internalized that, not even realizing that I did. And I remember thinking, when I was in my ending my master's program, deciding I wanted to go back for a PhD, I thought to myself, I really think that I want to teach college. So I'm going to go get a PhD. I know I can do all the coursework and whatnot, and I know I can write a dissertation, but I had this fear about doing the oral exam, where you basically have to defend your dissertation in front of your committee. I don't know why I had that fear, but it was kind of in the back of my mind, gee, I don't know if I can do that, if I can pass that. Well, sure enough, guess what happened? So I end up, doing all the classes, no problem, doing, all of my written comps, no problem. I get to my oral defense, and I ended up not passing because there was a flaw in my statistics. And I had to essentially, if I wanted to finish and get the degree, I essentially had to go back and redo all the statistics. And I literally remember that I was so devastated about that that thought process had actually happened to me, that I was afraid I wasn't going to pass it and I ended up not passing it, that it took me about 6 months or more to decide whether or not I was going to go back and finish it, because I just could not get past the fact that I was going to have to go back and redo half the dissertation and redo the statistics and then get up there in front of this group again and defend again. And I ended up realizing that all I was thinking about was the negative. All I was thinking about was, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to finish. Oh my gosh, I have to do all this work. And I finally had to stop and ask myself one question, the most important question. Do you want this degree or not? Do you want Ph.D. after your name or not? Because if you want it, then you're going to have to do the work, however much work it's going to be. And if you're okay with being ABD, which is all but dissertation, what they, the term that they say for people who, do all their coursework, but then don't finish their dissertation, what do you want? And I kept hearing, you have to finish this. You can't have come this far and not finish this. You want to teach college. You want this degree. You have to do this. And so I basically said, okay, that's it. I've made the decision. I'm moving forward. I'm getting this degree. And I did what I needed to do. I redid the statistics. I ended up actually not having to do as much work as I thought I did, but redid everything and I passed. And that has stuck with me. I mean, this was, 20 years ago, maybe, but that has stuck with me for all of my life, that I could have taken the negative thought pattern and not done it, but I chose to take the positive thought pattern. So that's something to think about. And I think it's just amazing in terms of the power of your thoughts, for sure. So this is the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take another quick break. And when we return, I will share with you more tips on how to shift your mindset on what it really means to get older. Stay tuned. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am talking to you today about the new psychology of aging, living younger. If you would like to contact me, you can go to my website, drdianehayden.com, or my magazine, naturalnutmeg.com. All my info is on both of those websites, and you can also sign up for weekly inspirational tips and our digital issues of our magazines as well. And we've been talking about how important your mindset is and the way that you think. And, I just shared with you, probably one of the most impactful things that's happened in my life in terms of what really made me realize that the power of your thoughts from a negative perspective, and how important it is to really focus on, thinking about what you want instead of what you don't want, not being afraid of the fearful thoughts that you have in your head, and really just, catching yourself when you start to say a lot of negative things to yourself. Some of the great researchers or thought leaders, people that I have followed, read books and things like that, that I love about this topic are Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's got a great book. Well, there's probably like 3 or 4 great books. Becoming Supernatural is one of them. I think You Are the Placebo is another one. Dr. Bernie Siegel is great. He is a surgical oncologist. He's retired now, but he has done a ton of research and speaks and writes books about the power of words. And actually, he believes that there's so much power in terms of the words that a doctor says to you. He's actually done training or trained other medical professionals in terms of when they're speaking to their patient, what words to use, what words to not use. Dr. Bruce Lipton's another great, amazing teacher and researcher. And he talks about the biology of belief and essentially how your thoughts and belief systems can impact your health and your life and all of that. So it really just is amazing. A ton of really cool research out there. I talked a little bit about the book Words Can Change Your Brain by Dr. Andrew Newberg. They actually put subjects into a functional MRI scanner that took a video of the neural changes in their subjects' brains when they flashed the word no for less than 1 second. And they actually saw a huge release of dozens of stress producing hormones and neurotransmitters. So basically, these chemicals are all released just because the person looked at the word no on a screen. Now think about, I mean, if it can happen that instantaneously just by you looking at the word no, think about what's going on when you're constantly thinking about negative stuff or constantly being fearful or constantly worrying. These chemicals immediately interrupt the normal functioning of your brain. They can impair logic, communication, and even reason. And they even said just seeing a list of negative words for a few seconds will make a highly anxious person feel worse. So you can actually damage key structures that regulate your memory, your feelings, your emotions, disrupt your sleep, your appetite. And I'm sure, this shouldn't be news, probably isn't, news to most of you when you think about times in your life when you've been really upset, really fearful, or have had some type of trauma. Many people have suffered with insomnia, not being able to sleep, appetite being affected one way or the other, and just, day to day, just, feeling sad or angry or depressed, all of that. So it's really amazing. And, it really can make a huge difference in terms of when, the way that you think and what's going on and what's happening in your body on a moment to moment basis, actually. So they even said, if you vocalize your negativity or even slightly frown when you say no, more stress chemicals will be released. And that to me was really crazy. Even the fact by just making a facial expression, you can release chemicals. So we need to smile more, right? Every day, for sure. Pretty cool. I mentioned Bernie Siegel. One of the things he talks about is fear-provoking words like illness and death also stimulated the brain in negative ways. And he's been teaching about this for years and relating stories about his patients and outcomes, depending on if the patient believed that they were going to get better or not, or if they were given a diagnosis of a terminal illness. And there's just amazing research that shows that, if the patient believed that they were going to die, usually within as soon as 6 months to a year or 2 years, they did end up passing, versus a patient that didn't internalize that, didn't believe that. Actually, I think some of the studies have shown that not only have some beaten their illness, but many of them have lived like 5 to 10 years longer than what the prognosis was. And that to me is just amazing. I mean, really, when you think about it, what that's telling me is your brain, your mind, your thoughts are really controlling every function of your body, and when we realize that, and when we realize, that our mind, our thoughts have that much control, I feel like we should never again think or speak in a negative way. And I know that's impossible, but at least to be more and more, present and realizing, okay, I'm saying something negative, and I need to flip that, or I need to focus on something positive. I think there's actually research out there that says for every negative word you say, you have to actually say 5 positive words to get your brain or your physiology out of the negative release of chemicals and things like that. So for every negative word you say or negative thought you have to say 5 positive words or think 5 positive thoughts to stop the cascade of chemicals that's happening physiologically from the negative one. I mean, that's a lot of work. It would be better if we just didn't have the negative thoughts again, which I know is, not going to happen, but it's important. And we can also get into a neural bias for negativity if we don't repetitiously and consciously generate these positive thoughts on a regular basis. So choose your words wisely and this will allow you to interrupt your brain's propensity to be negative. And I think that, I want to come back to obviously the whole topic we've been talking about, the new psychology of aging. When I think about, what I've just been speaking about to you all, to me, mindset is probably the most important thing when we realize, gosh, look at all the chemicals that are going on, the things that are happening in the body, just by thinking a negative thought. And how can that, how does that relate to how our body ages? When if we shift our mindset and we become, more positive, we become less fearful, we have more happy, joyful, present moments, how that can really help us live younger. And, I think that that's going to be one of the things that we're seeing is more and more important in the research. It's not just, okay, what are the supplements we're going to be able to take? What are the way that we eat, our lifestyle. Yes, all that stuff's important. But I think that our mindset, our thoughts, our belief systems is really what it's going to come down to that makes or breaks how we age and whether or not we're able to reverse that and actually live younger. So it'll be interesting. It'll totally be interesting to see when more and more of this research comes out. I'm excited about it. I hope you are excited about it. And I want to thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific. Next week on the Dr. Diane Show, we will be discussing my signature program, the Spark Method, the 5 essential characteristics you need to develop to be wildly successful in any endeavor. I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you back here next time. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.